If I had to say in 2 words what Advent is about, it would be promises and waiting. Promises and waiting. It's all about promises that God has given, and it's all about waiting for them to come about. But we do it in a kind of a strange way. It's a little tricky because we're remembering something from the past, but we're preparing for it in the future. We're preparing, we have 2 candles lit. Next week, the pink one, because we say, rejoice, we're almost there. We've got 4 weeks of Advent that we prepare because we're waiting for the Feast of Christmas, but that's celebrating something that happened over 2,000 years ago. So we're looking forward to look backward. Then, like the second reading said, we're preparing for the end of time, and it was a very descriptive reading about all the things that would happen, the catastrophes and the heavens falling apart and everything, just going to be, a crazy time. And we're waiting for that in the future, but we don't know when it'll come. Paul was telling us about that over 2,000 years ago. Coming any day, he says, any day, get ready, get ready. And here 2,000 and some years have gone by, and it still hasn't happened. So I think it's very likely it's at least 2,000 years away, maybe more, maybe 1,000,000. Who knows? So we're waiting for the future. But the real waiting is not waiting at all. It's supposed to be right now. And in every one of these places, looking to the future to look back for the coming of Jesus, looking for Jesus coming at the end of time, and the real waiting is this moment and realizing God in our midst, Jesus Christ in our midst. It's also about promise. And of course, I had to go on the internet for this. And I had to check out some information. So tried a couple things. Wasn't real happy about my first couple browsing. But I then went to this. And I found, if it'll open for me, please, please. I found some promises that we should keep. And there's 11 of them, but I'm going to save the last for best. Oh my God, it's a little slow today, huh? Laura, you got to fix this, okay? All right. These are promises that somebody wrote that we should all do. We should all pay attention to these in our lives. Oh my God, when the internet is going to give you trouble, it gives you trouble. Okay. Promises you must make to yourself. I will accept everything I am and everything I am not. I will appreciate others for who they are. I will speak kindly and consciously to others. I will speak kindly and consciously to myself. I will stop trying to control everything. I will appreciate the beauty of small moments. I will do what I think is right. I will grow from my challenges. I will realize and use my power. I will follow the path my heart longs to take. If you were counting, that's number 10. You must wait. More waiting for number 11. Now, in this season of promise and waiting, these scriptures come alive today. The first reading is about Israel waiting for God to fulfill some promises. The Jews suffered many, many things. They were occupied by the Romans and other powers. They were beaten in war. They were divided into a kingdom of the north and south. They were carried away in captivity. In fact, when this reading was written, it was about the time when they were in Babylonia. And they were being ripped out of their land, and Babylonia was trying to rip them out of their religion. And it was a very stressful time for them. And so this Isaiah passage is about promises that God would keep for them, that He would be there for them, that He would bring them to fulfillment. And it's a very beautiful passage about creating this highway, this straight road, leveling down the mountains, filling in the valleys, and creating a highway to the Lord so that they could come to God and God could come to them, and they would be able to experience the promise of God in their life. Well, when Mark writes his gospel, he sees John the Baptist is the one who is preparing the way for Jesus. And this quote from Isaiah that we just heard in the first reading gets put into the Gospel of Mark. And he tells us, prepare the way of the Lord. Prepare a highway to the Lord. It all sounds nice, a highway to the Lord. But let me give you an example of a highway that some people are not looking forward to. The city of South Pasadena does not want a highway, I don't know the number, that comes up from Alhambra. The 7, the Long Beach Freeway. The 10? No, 7. 710? Whatever. It's coming up through Alhambra and it stops at Valley. And then you have to go through all these streets. It takes forever because South Pasadena, I guess they're better than all the other communities of the world who have had to have freeways come through them. Right here, too, the number 2. You guys had to accept a freeway, whether you liked it or not. But South Pasadena says no, and no it is. Well, now they're talking about what? What do they want to do? Pardon? A tunnel underground. Now, I have a priest friend. He's just a little strange in some ways. We've been going on vacations together for about 35 years, go to Mexico. One time we were in Mexico City, and of course they've had some big earthquakes there. And before we went to bed, I saw him go over a chair, and he put his pants, he put his shirt, he put his shoes up on the chair. I say, what are you doing? And he says, well, we could have an earthquake. I'm going to be ready. I said, what? Well, he happened to be in the seminary when they had the Silma earthquake, and we were awakened about 5:30 in the morning. I was up in Camarillo at the time, and he had to run outside with all the other people and stand in line outside from the buildings because they were afraid of a possible collapse. And he didn't get time to get his shoes. So he stood out in the cold morning in San Fernando, I think it was in January, and there he was freezing. And he vowed to himself, I will never go to bed without putting my shoes nearby. So I said, okay, I get that, but why on the chair? He says, oh, because of the rats and cucarachas. He says, I'm going to be prepared. Lord. So there he was. Now I love to say to him, every time he's with me near Alhambra, he comes from Alhambra, I say, oh, I can't wait till they put that tunnel in. You're going to drive through there with me? Never. He said, if there's an earthquake, that's it. You'll never escape. Well, we don't worry about that in Los Angeles. We do a double-tier freeway here, even though the one in San Francisco collapsed. We're not afraid. So we're going to put a tunnel in the center of earthquake region under the ground for, 5-7 miles? Make a highway to the Lord. You see, a highway that is straight gets us to places faster. It's kind of like as the crow flies. If you want to go from here to San Francisco, tell me the prettiest route. 1. Tell me the fastest route. 5. Everyone knows it. It's straight and it's ugly. It just goes on and on. But you shave off a couple of hours. If we build a highway that requires leveling mountains and filling up valleys, where is that highway being built? I'll give you a hint. The word starts with a W. It's a long word. It includes the word wild, but that's only the beginning of it. Wilderness. If you're knocking down mountains and filling in valleys, you're putting a highway where it doesn't belong. You're carving out of the earth somehow, filling up land and tearing down land to build this highway. So I guarantee you, wherever that highway goes, you aren't escaping wilderness. You're going right through it. And perhaps that really is the honest message about Advent. You see, there are a lot of religions, a lot of Christian religions that talk only about joy. Now, our gospel is filled with joy. In fact, living the gospel, even through our struggles, even through death, bring us to joy. We believe that. But not every moment of the gospel is joyful. There's a lot of pain. What's at the center of our faith? What's the most powerful symbol that we recognize always in our faith? The cross. We start every prayer not throwing balloons up in the air, but signing ourselves with a cross. An instrument of death. An instrument of terror and suffering. Passion. That's what we mark ourselves with constantly, because we know, as a people of faith, that the cross is the reality of life, and you must go through it. No one escapes it. No amount of money in the world can get us to escape the cross, because the cross so often isn't even exterior, it's interior. The highway to the Lord goes right through the wilderness, and that's the truth of life. But the real promise is that in the wilderness, with all of its dangers and pains and sadness and struggle, that is where we meet the Lord in the way that is probably most meaningful. Because He promises to embrace us and love us and hold us and lift us high, even in the greatest struggles of life. And the people that really find the joy of the gospel find it because they've gone through the trials and experienced their God there. Now for the 11th promise. This was quite a nice list that this person constructed, telling us all the things that we need to do to really meet God and we'll meet ourselves. And I think any Christian could accept these as a way of meeting God in our lives too. But this is the last one the person writes. The last one is this. All those 10 things that they said they would do, I will have some fun while I'm doing it all. I will have some fun while I'm doing it all. Advent is a really kind of unique season. Of course, during Lent, we're preparing for a special event, the death and resurrection. But in Advent, we're focusing on, of all things, this little baby child Jesus born into the world, the great celebration of the Feast of Incarnation, God taking on human flesh and becoming one of us. And everyone looks to Christmas, I think, with great joy, because it's so easy to draw close to the manger scene, to the baby Jesus, filled with love, and we love it. Looking forward to the end of time isn't quite as joy-filled when we start hearing readings like this, that everything in all of heaven and earth will fall apart and explode and implode and be torn apart. And that's the way that we're going to come to the fullness of the glory of God as we're taken through the end times. But the real thing that is most important, that perhaps escapes us often, because the psychologists say most people can't live in the present very long. They're either living in the past with regret or they're living in the future with fear. But the only thing we've got right now is this 1 hour right here. I'm hoping that everyone will stay alive for this whole Mass. That's the hour we've got. We don't even have a promise for tonight. But how many people came in here and have already several times this Mass thought about something that's coming up that they're anxious about? And how many will live all day long fretting over what will be, maybe? When we've got each other, we've got the presence of the Lord in word and sacrament, we've got a people of faith sitting all around us, we've got our hearts filled with prayer and praise and open to the goodness of God within us and to be shared by us with one another. That's our hour. That's our hour. We can live always thinking of the past, thinking of the future, but what we have is the present. And today, in this Advent season, a season that by its very nature is one of waiting and looking for a promise, we have to realize most of all that the biggest promise is right now, being shared, being lived, and giving us life.